a lot of devices, so just in case this fails, do cast an eye over the article on page 48. It may turn out to be better. So 68%. 68% of IT projects either fail or have major challenges. So even if it's very dangerous to try and isolate the root cause to a single factor, today I'm going to try to drill down into one of the causes, namely what we call elicitation. We are going to have a little bit about the definition of elicitation, that is about the activity. Next, I'm going to focus some more on the object of elicitation. And next, I am going to present a little bit more details on the interview and interface analysis. So the basics, right? There's some boring definitions of the regulatory and the governing authorities in the business analysis domain. And I'm going to just read it. And they say that elicitation is to draw forth or to bring out. And something I particularly like to highlight is this little bit here in the brackets, to draw out something latent or potential. Now, IREB, which is yet another regulatory body in business analysis, rephrases this, but oddly enough, there are some other words like unconscious and subconscious, which help me make my point today. The Latin definition of elicitation is to bring out by trickery or magic. And all kidding aside, there is something to this magical character of the elicitation. And in the coming slides, I'm going to try to illustrate my viewpoint. Not really my focus today is this list of elicitation techniques. So for further reading, Monica and I would be happy to refer you to more details on this. So we've tackled the definition of the elicitation activity, right? Now, what is the object of elicitation? I'm going to again turn to the definition of the requirements, which are a condition or a capability needed by a stakeholder to solve a problem or to achieve an objective. And words like solving a problem or objective are very key to understanding this activity and the role of a business analysis. It sounds simple, but simple doesn't always mean that it is an easy task. And the reason for this is, at least in my view, we don't really know what brings value to us as human beings. We make false assumptions, or we make wrong estimates into what represents and what constitutes value to us. So, digging a little bit deeper, I traced it back to the differentiation between problem statement and solution definition. As we've seen in the previous remarks, we want to draw out the problems that the stakeholders want to solve. So this is the part where I insist about problem statement. There's a big difference between problem statement and solution definition. This argument is supported in the presentation found at this link, and I strongly recommend it. It's a funny reading that goes round in circles, only to come to the conclusion that the what, namely the problem statement from one group, is the how for the other group in the next layer of granularity. If I may, I will turn to an example to illustrate what I've pointed out so far. namely what I call a broken window example, but I think this is a poor choice of word, and it would be better to say the missing window example. So imagine you're missing a window, right? And I'm sure that the first thing that comes to mind is to, okay, I'll just buy what we call in Romanian un geam termopan, and I'll solve the problem. Okay, how about we consider the context for a moment? What if I am the director of a prison? Or what if I'm a farmer and I'm on the field? Will the supposedly obvious solution fit both my situations? I tend to think not, and the reason is that in the prison example, I may be very concerned about aspects like security or confidentiality, but mainly security. Whereas if I were a farmer on a field, the only thing I could care about would be to have a temporary cover for rain. So yes, the same problem, but different perspectives. And this is why I think it is very important to make a distinction between the two, problem and solution. Two of the most popular techniques of elicitations are interview and interface analysis. The interview may seem very straightforward, it's self-explanatory and doesn't need too much covering, so I'm not going to go into the definitions because it's just a planned conversation and it is meant to make people tell you what you don't ask them. And again, we go back to the magical character. As if it weren't hard enough, we also have to build up on the human tendencies on the one hand side and also on what we learn during the interview. So you may get an idea on why interviewing is hard. So I chose to highlight in my presentation some keywords that help us as business analysts maintain our focus and get to the bottom of the problem. So if we use why, we have a fair chance of finding out the deeper motivations of the stakeholders' requirements. We would bring out facts with what questions. By asking how, we go into a discussion about the process and not the structure. And if we want to create a maximum space for the stakeholder to give details, we ask good questions. On the right-hand side, we have some examples of questions that could help us, and my favorite are these so-called putative questions, and maybe Paul Evans can help us with the pronunciation because I couldn't really tell if I said it right. These are just replacing the variables in a formula with numbers. So I would test my understanding of the domain problem by giving an example and formulating a question. In this way, you just mitigate any risk of misunderstanding and personal interpretation. Risks that come along with modeling an abstract view of this complex world that is the IT world. On the soft side, something not so soft, some traps, we can build on the human tendencies of people. And the most common are the desire of confirmation and the tendency to gossip or the tendency to complain. And if we want to use those, we should keep in mind to avoid expectations or the desire for self-expression. We should really keep our eyes on the target and not only the problem of the stakeholder, but also the person we're speaking to. And first and foremost, in my view, minimize the ego threat, because nobody wants to be found on the spotlight and having no idea. For those who are experienced or comfortable, we can try some smart influencing by expressing a mutual interest, or just try simple flattery, some quid pro quo, and you might get to the bottom of this. You may say that this is all just a smoke screen and it's just a lot of nice words about something that doesn't really help us. So in my final 2 slides, I chose to speak about interface analysis, which in my view goes a bit hand in hand, but digs deeper into the technical, more concrete side of the requirement. So an interface analysis has the purpose to identify connections between solutions and solution components, and how they will interact. This kind of goes into my next slide about what are the steps of interface analysis, namely getting the inputs and the outputs, also learning the validation rules that govern these inputs and outputs, and the events that trigger interaction. You think that it just a dotted list, a simple bullet point list, but each of these details that we find out for the inputs, outputs, and validation rules will generate a further and further conversation, and this is how the elicitation process rolls out. Next, my colleague Monica will walk you through the best practices for some other elicitation techniques and the challenges that we face during this process. So thank you all, and I pass the relay to you. Thank you.
I'm going to be very short, not talking about all the details, because this can be found in our article. My colleague, Catherine Angel, unfortunately couldn't be here. He had written in our article about best practices. As you all know, we have a community of business analysts here in Cluj. And in February, we have combined the theoretical with the practical approach, and the people were quite enthusiastic about the exercise that we have done there. It was a group activity. My colleagues Madalina and Catalin have prepared an interesting example, and we actually could identify the best practices live. So by approaching all the necessary details. As far as you know, we need to identify during the process of gathering requirements the best practices of identifying them and then working with them for them. Actually, what we want is to obtain in the end what the customer needs, and to obtain finally a satisfied customer. As far as you know, the quality of the requirements is greatly influenced by the techniques employed during the requirements elicitation, because elicitation is all about the needs of learning what the customer wants, what we want to deliver them, and how we do this. I'm not going to enter in a lot of details because you can identify them by reading the article, but you have to keep in mind that in a business analysis project approach, the part of gathering requirements and the way you do it is very important. Selecting the right elicitation technique this directly influences a lot of factors, like what is the experience of the business analyst, what is the culture of the organization, the complexity of the project, the business domain, and so on. Based on the requirements engineer's experience or analyst experience, he or she must have the ability to select the appropriate elicitation techniques on a regular basis. Moreover, for just offering you some tips, if you are going to explore our article, you will find a lot of best practices regarding collaborative sessions, interviews with experts, issue lists, and models. This is our bibliography for this part. And actually, before ending this presentation, as each methodology, even the gathering requirements has some changes and future steps. And before going into the presentation, I would kindly ask you to tell me about the changes and changes you have met on the project, in order to see if you have any ideas that could be brought into discussion. I would gladly like to hear them. Have you met these challenges like reducing the gap between experts and novices? It happens that in a company, the Department of Business Analysts is very important, and we have analysts with a strong experience in the domain, but we have also new people, newbies in the domain, and we want to share our knowledge with them. In this way, in gathering requirements, it's very important that the senior one should learn the new one, all the necessary information that it is required. Other challenges on the project will be limited access to project stakeholders. It happens that our customers are abroad and we are here, so we have working on distributed teams. We don't have the possibility each time to go there and to travel a lot in order to meet with them. So we have to use other means like video conferencing or virtual techniques. It happens that our stakeholders have right now some ideas and tomorrow can change their minds. So actually, it is very important to know how to deal with this issue. Maybe have different priorities. One stakeholder wants to change the world, the other wants to do something else, and we have to know how to approach, how to convince them that we have to have an issue list for approaching our activities. The stakeholders may be focused on one type of requirement. Even if you have a project with a lot of requirements, maybe one of them is considered to be more attractive than the others. You have to know how to deal with it. Stakeholders are afraid to be pinned down. And of course, before ending our presentation, as any other process, our process has some future trends. And the future felicitation techniques can be seen on this slide. It is very important to reduce the practical, to reduce the gap between the theory and practice, and the people with experience and those which are at the beginning of their way. It's very important to follow some guidelines for technique selection and for managing the impact of factors on the process. It is very important to combine what we know with what we have to apply. And of course, as you already have found out from our presentation, maybe from reading our article, requirements gathering, it is an extremely important activity in requirements engineering. If you think which are the most important sources of our requirements, besides the existing documentation of a project or product, the stakeholders remain the main source for requirements gathering. And of course, the choice of selecting the corresponding and the best suitable elicitation technique is usually decided by a requirements engineer based on the cultural and organizational environment in which he works, and of course of the complexity of the project. If you want to find find out more information about this topic or even to improve your knowledge in this area, we kindly ask you to write us an email or questions, or to take one of these presenting below books and to read, because they are actually quite good, and here examples are covered by theory and vice versa. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, we would be glad to answer to them. If not, we will meet after the session and discuss in further details. Before giving the word to a video, I'd like to remember that next week on 25th of March, we have the Business Analysis Meetup event at Cluj Hub. We will talk about planning and communicating change in business analysis, and we have invited a speaker from Bucharest, a trainer in this area, that we will explain us how we have to manage with, we have to deal with change on projects. And the practical approach will be combined with theoretical one, so we are looking forward to meeting you there. More information, I think you have received, all the companies have received via email the information, but it can be found out on LinkedIn, because we have there a business analysis group, and on meetup.com if you search for business analysis. Many thanks.
Thank you, Monica.